Once upon a time, a certain trader was leading a caravan to another country, to sell his goods. Along the way, his men came to the edge of a severely hot sand desert. They asked around and found that, during the day the sun heats up the fine sand, until it's as hot as charcoal, so no one can walk on it. Not even bullocks or camels. So the caravan leader hired a desert guide, one who could follow the stars, so they could travel only at night. When the sand cools down, they began the dangerous nighttime journey across the desert. They walked during the night, and rested during the day. They followed this process for several days. One evening, after eating their evening meal, and after the sand cooled, they started out again. Later that night, the desert guide, who was driving the first cart, saw from the stars that they were getting close to the other side of the desert. He had also overeaten. So, when he relaxed, he dozed off to sleep. The bullocks, who couldn't tell directions by reading the stars, gradually turned to the side, and kept going in a big wide circle, until they ended up at the same place they had started. By then it was morning, and the people realized they were back at the same spot they'd camped the day before. They lost heart, and began to cry about their condition. Since the desert crossing was supposed to be over by now, they had no more water and provisions, and were afraid they would die of thirst. They even began to blame the caravan leader and the desert guide. "We can do nothing without water," they complained. Then the trader thought to himself, "If I lose courage now, in the middle of this disastrous situation, my leadership has no meaning. If I fall to weeping and regretting this misfortune, and do nothing, all these goods and bullocks, and even the lives of the people, including myself, may be lost. I must be energetic and face the situation." So he began walking back and forth, trying to think of a plan to save them all. Being observant, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a small clump of grass. He thought, without water, no plant could live in this desert. So he called over the most energetic of his fellow travelers, and asked them to dig up the ground on that very spot. They dug and dug, and after a while, they got down to a large stone. Seeing the stone, they stopped, and began to blame the leader again, saying, "This effort is useless. We're just wasting our time." But the tradesman replied, "No, my friends, if we give up the effort, we will all be ruined and our poor animals will die. Let's not lose courage." Saying this, he got down into the hole, and put his ear to the stone. He heard the sound of flowing water. Immediately, he called over a young man who had been digging, and said, "If you give up now, we will all perish. So take this heavy hammer, and strike at the rock." The man lifted the hammer over his head, and hit the rock as hard as he could. The man himself was the most surprised when the stone split in two, and a mighty stream of water gushed out. Immediately, all the people were overjoyed. They drank, bathed, and washed the animals. They cooked their food and ate. But before they left, they raised a high banner, so that other travelers could see it from afar, and come to the new spring in the middle of the hot sand desert. Then they continued on safely towards the end of their journey. Thank you.